Hello Lemoyne, my name is Luca, some people online might also know me as Logstar, and this is my new laptop. Certainly not a Mac, right? But trust me, I really was about to buy a ridiculously expensive one as a software developer, and this is why I didn't. This journey started off a few months back with me finally graduating school. What does that mean? Well, having lots of free time for a quite brief period, having to choose a field to study in, and sometimes having nice parents that want to make your start easier and offer to buy you a laptop. Almost immediately, all of my considerations spun around choosing a MacBook, as I have heard a lot of great things about it from friends and fellow developers. Heck, I even ordered a MacBook for a great price online, but my order was cancelled for some mysterious reason. At the risk of foreshadowing, I can tell you that this was for the better, and I'm now happily typing the script on the device I've just shown you. But first things first, let's follow literally every buyer's guide ever and first determine my needs for the new device. It shouldn't have to be said, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, everyone has vastly different needs for their computer, and what might be a good choice for me can be a terrible one for you. So take everything I say here as my humble opinion and not definitive advice. With that out of the way, my needs are basically solely a great experience for software development as well as office work. I don't edit photos or videos regularly, and I especially don't game. What does that mean? Well, I couldn't care less about the GPU performance or an especially color accurate screen, but what truly matters to me are the following things. First, excellent overall CPU performance with a slight emphasis on single core for quick application launches, as well as fast computation of non-optimized single-threaded algorithms. Since compiling code parallelizes beautifully and uses all available threads to their full extent, the overall multi-core performance is still important to me though. Second, great input devices since I'm basically typing all day long. Especially a keyboard with high reliability and an enjoyable feeling is important to me. A nice touchpad would be great to have too, but as long as I don't feel limited by the accuracy of it, it isn't that much of an importance to me. Third, an exceptional battery runtime that allows me to truly work everywhere and makes thinking of charging a thing of the past for casual use. I'm obviously aware that compiling large code bases all day long or even running an emulator like for Android development is quite taxing, but a big battery and good efficiency is key there too. Last but certainly not least, I demand a Unix-based system and won't ever use Windows as my main operating system. This might sound rather extreme in the beginning, but I had such a bad experience developing with it personally that it's just not an option for me anymore. The laptop thus needs to either run macOS out of the box or have good Linux support, which comes with its own set of hardware requirements. In the nice to have section I have the following things. If the package overall is great though, I can also live without them. First, good I/O with full-size USB-A ports as well as HDMI would be really handy. These come in useful in a variety of situations, from connecting a projector for a meeting to uploading a new firmware to your device before showing it to your investors. It's really always handy to have some I/O available. Second, user replaceable components and good repairability are also always amazing to have, since they can greatly extend the lifetime of a device. Most but not all of these criteria immediately make current MacBooks an appealing choice. They have an epic battery life due to the very efficient ARM architecture of the M series processors, good performance, especially in the single core department, but multi-core is also fine, and an amazing screen with best-in-class touchpad. The keyboards are also fine, and macOS allows me to run all the software I need adequately without many of the shortcomings of Windows. At its core, macOS still is a real Unix system that allows you to run basically all code from the server side without any hassle and at native performance, something that won't ever be matched by Windows due to its design. In uncommon fashion for Apple, macOS is also relatively open with admin rights for the user, no online account requirement for using it, as well as the ability to download applications from wherever you like and run them. Additionally, there are plenty of privacy-focused tools like Little Snitch available for it that make it a way more privacy-focused alternative to Windows, despite being also closed source. Furthermore, the broader user base compared to Linux has the great side effect of basically all commercial software being available for it. This allows you to run all the evil Adobe products you want and can be a necessity for certain individuals. Not me though. Overall, current MacBooks just really are great developer machines and would be easy to recommend if there wasn't the plethora of artificial shortcomings Apple introduced to them. I'm talking about things like the external screen limitations and passive cooling on the MacBook Air line, no multi-stream transport over USB-C, as well as the extremely picky scaling that basically makes using a screen with one of Apple's chosen resolution a necessity. Oh, and there's also the outrageous pricing, especially for upgrades. Until now, all of my machines had 16GB of RAM, but that's just not cutting it anymore, due to how memory intensive the IntelliJ IDEs as well as Android Studio with its emulator have become. So I need more RAM for my new laptop, as well as at least 512GB of storage, ideally over 1TB. The MacBook Air starts at a rather pricey but still somewhat acceptable $1299 here in Germany, but only features 8GB of RAM as well as a 256GB SSD for that price. So I would need to max out the RAM to 24GB and upgrade the SSD to at least 512GB to match my requirements, which immediately puts me at $1989 here in Germany and is an outrageous price to pay for these simple upgrades. Even worse, 24GB feels barely enough for me today and not very future-proof, which is something I demand such an expensive machine to be. The only solution for this would be to go with an M3 Pro MacBook Pro with at least 36GB of RAM, but that starts at $29.59 here in Germany and still only features a 512GB SSD for that price. Granted, it has a better processor, active cooling, better I/O and also a better screen, it's just overall a better device, but paying almost 3,000 euros for a laptop is just crazy and I heavily dislike the idea. The final nail in the coffin for me personally was Apple's reveal of their AI plans with deep integration into their OS at WWDC this year. Most might find these very exciting, but where others only see great potential, I also see the very real security as well as privacy issues. I also heavily dislike the idea of having these features so deeply integrated into the OS of my most important device. They will become more and more difficult to remove in the following years, and that's just nothing I want to deal with. Furthermore, everything in these devices is soldered down, so I literally can't upgrade a single component. Replacing parts is also a typical Apple nightmare, with lots of unnecessary part linking, making third-party repairs basically impossible and forcing third-party components to not work to their full potential. This makes these machines not very appealing from a repairability as well as sustainability standpoint. All of this combined eliminated a current MacBook as a viable option for me personally and put me back at either searching for a feasible laptop to run Linux or waiting for the perfect laptop to come out, which will never be the case. Luckily enough, I quickly found a superb match for the Linux option with the HP EliteBook 845 G10. This is not sponsored, by the way. At the time of purchase in July 2024, it featured an AMD Ryzen 7 708040U, 32GB of RAM, as well as a 1TB SSD for just over $1,100, which is half of what I would have paid for the MacBook alternative and even better in some regards. Especially the tactile keyboard, a port selection featuring something else than just USB-C, as well as its repairability stand out as positive aspects with it. I can easily upgrade the RAM or SSD, replace the battery or any other part, and there are even official repair guides available. That's something that's very rare these days, except for framework devices, of course. To be fully honest with you all, I was actually really considering a similarly spec'd Framework 13 laptop, but despite having a bigger battery, it has shorter runtimes, is louder under load and quite a bit more expensive, so I opted for the HP in the end. To my very surprise, everything just worked out of the box with my Linux distribution of choice. I run Pop! OS, by the way, and even under Linux I managed to get an all-day battery life with casual use, something I would have never expected. I also had the great opportunity to compare to the M2 Pro Mac Mini of a friend and can say that it has on-par performance to the very similar M3 Pro in everyday developer scenarios. To be more specific, we used compiling the open source tool Ghidra as a benchmark, and both of these machines took about 4 minutes to compile a clean build after downloading all the necessary dependencies. Sure, the battery life isn't as epic as on a MacBook, and especially under load you manage to drain it rather quickly, but it's still an excellent machine overall. I'm very pleased both with it as well as the money saved I compared to going with the Apple option. This includes sacrificing some of the quality of life aspects of a MacBook for the freedom this device offers me, both in hardware as well as software. Before coming to an end, I want to talk about the elephant in the room, Windows on ARM laptops. Yeah, they seem pretty great except for this useless Copilot key and offer MacBook rivaling battery life as well as performance. But at least currently they still struggle with software compatibility, stability as well as Linux support. This is to be expected for a first generation product and will likely change in the future. Sadly, I'm in the market for a laptop today and need something that works right now, which means that ARM isn't a viable option for me personally. Qualcomm, the developer of the processors found in these devices, seems quite determined to bring Linux support to them though, and there already have been some community efforts to build the necessary device trees. However, I can say from personal experience that usable Linux support takes around 2 to 3 generations, and that's just more time than I can wait for. With that said, feel free to share your thoughts or personal experiences in the comments down below. Have a lovely day, and until next week on my blog logster.net or somewhere here on YouTube. Bye!